ich dir noch angesäche, so bist du sie aller Ehre. Was ist Wundes hier geschäche? Dass ein Magd ein Kind gebar, ihre über aller Engel Schar. Was das nicht ein Wunder gar.
This is The New Right, a podcast for the lost arts, reclaiming the literary holy land from the heathen. This is Dan Baltic, and we are not joined by Matt this week. Matt is engaged in January 6th festivities in Los Angeles, doing a event by the Filthy Armenian, I believe. And it sounds like a lot of fun, but I'm going to have more fun because I am here today with Max Teller of WBS Apparel. And WBS Apparel is, if you don't know, it is White Boy Summer Apparel. They are, if you see people on the timeline who are wearing cool-ass peppy hats, and famously Nut Army Elite t-shirts, because we have a line of those that have just come out. And good old boys, Bog Beef, Marek, Fredo, the boys, their t-shirts, they have a good old boy shirt. They have, it's the Law in Kennesaw, which is, Max will tell you what the Law in Kennesaw is, but as we go on here. But yeah, without further ado, this is Max. He is one of the masterminds behind WBS Apparel, White Boy Summer Apparel. Welcome to the pod, Max.
Dan Baltic, thanks for having me on. It's a pleasure.
Absolutely. So WBS, you guys, you've emerged, somewhat quickly. I noticed, at one point, I'm a regular listener to Good Old Boys, and Bog and Marek started talking about WBS Apparel. I'm like, oh, what's going on here? And then I start seeing on the timeline these cool ass t-shirts and hats and what have you. And you got this off the ground pretty quickly, and now you have content partnerships with GOB, Good Old Boys, myself, and Axios, an exercise training company, and with many more in the pipeline, I understand. So, how did all that come to be?
Well, every year, my friends and myself have a White Boy Summer party to celebrate the beginning of summer. And last year, we figured let's do something special, and we had some hats commissioned for the occasion. Some Pepe hats. They're a huge hit. We were out on the town. Even normies were asking about them. Hey, where'd you get that? Where can I buy that? Etc. And my friend Chet, who is the co-owner as well, we kind of had that light bulb moment, like, hey, we could really do something with this. And you really don't see too much merch catering to our sphere online in general. So we definitely saw a gap.
Absolutely.
Like, hey, let's go all in. So yeah, it's all started with that. And just for reference, normies actually refer to Pepe as Frogman. If you don't know, when they don't understand the context. So,
but that's amazing. So you were wearing these, and normies who didn't know, they were just like, "Oh, this is a cool frog," And I imagine like some people who saw it who were in the know were like, wow, I didn't even realize you could get apparel that looks like real clothing, with my favorite internet guys on it.
There's a lot of printing services where you can, upload a JPEG, hit enter, something shows up eventually, and it really doesn't cater to that attention to detail that's necessary for any quality clothing, apparel, merchandise.
Yeah.
When
No, I mean you guys have like real good quality. So like as the Nut Man, I do have my Nut Army Elite t-shirts and they feel as, Bog and Marek have, mentioned your shirts, that you make for them. Um, really nice, really soft, really like this does not feel like a kind of cardboard feeling t-shirt that they sell just to, slap an image on it. Like this is one that actually feels good to wear. Like I'm right now wearing a Bonobos what are these fucking shirts called? It's like a
that's a Henley, I believe.
Hemley, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it feels really nice. And my White Boy Summer Nut Army Elite t-shirt, it feels about the same. And that's not nothing. That's really cool.
So when it comes to product manufacturing, I think everybody's had that impulse buy. They saw something, whether an ad came across their timeline or they saw something on YouTube or a content creator
Mm,
advertise something and they made an emotional impulse, uh, an impulsive
bye.
purchase. And
Yeah.
everybody's done that. And a lot of times something shows up and it might fit weird, or you run it through the wash one time and it just it's not the same,
Mm,
and a lot of stuff doesn't do well in the dryer either. So we've kind of have that attention to detail and making sure that it's going to last, because at the end of the day, the longer it lasts, the more people are wearing it out, the more they're going to see it and they say, hey, where did you get that, etc. So
absolutely.
it's an investment. You're not getting as good of margins as certain uh, services, but that's okay because we're going to grow, and that's what it's all about.
Absolutely. So take us from you're out on the town, people remark, "Hey, that's a cool Pepe hat or Frogman hat, what have you," and the light bulb above your head, appears, and you realize this could be a business. How did we get from there to, Nut Army Elite t-shirts?
Well, my friends and I have always been quite the shit posters. So, shit posting is an art, as you know, and
Absolutely.
anyone that goes to the WBS Apparel website will understand. It's definitely signaling to a certain type of crowd, uh, and there's a thing with art where you show, you don't tell, and that's what we're trying to do. At first, we just wanted to make some cool stuff that kind of signaled to in groups, etc. And in a way, if you think about it, uh, a Freemason might signal to another Freemason their identity and allegiance
Mm,
by wearing a ring or maybe a piece of jewelry or something.
yeah.
And what you're doing as a dissident, where you might wear one of our items, is kind of signal maybe your ideology or uh, you know allegiance
Yeah.
yourself, where no one else would really get that unless you don't get it unless you get it, right? And
Yeah.
that was kind of the motivation of the different art pieces that we made and trying to make original content and apply that to our other products. Uh, so we, started doing that. Chet has a lot of great experience with the product manufacturing side and business
Mm,
side from his prior jobs, career,
mm.
etc. So we had the material knowledge to put a lot of these items together and get them done. And it's definitely a learning process. There's a whole material science behind getting images properly uh, printed, especially with screen printing. It is an art in itself,
Mm.
getting that done. So, we've been learning as we go to a certain extent. Well, we had enough knowledge to get started and know that we could make things better than 90% of the stuff you see in the market catering to the internet sphere.
Yeah. I mean, what strikes me is that there's a lot of money that's being left on the table here in the sense of you have this kind of internet micro celeb community, this niche, community where you essentially have little to no media, or you have media interest, I suppose, but not commercial interest. People are not looking to capitalize upon BAP, for instance, or frankly, Nutcracker, or even Pepe. I mean, well, obviously that the Pepe is it's a meme at this point, but you would think that there would be kind of a cutting edge clothing manufacturer who wanted to like get in on the action and kind of vacuum up this online vitality, this Riz, as the kids would put it. But no one's doing that, and for good reason, because big corporations are, afraid of getting canceled. They want to, kind of preserve their salaries, their what have you. Like no one outside of small business, and this is what I've kind of learned starting my own small business recently, is you're not really at a larger institution, whether it's a company, whether it's some sort of bank or law firm or whatever, your incentive is tied to preserving your immediate position and not taking risks that would jeopardize your employment. And it's very different when if you have a corporation that's composed of people like that, you're not going to have anyone who says, hey, we should make Pepe hats, because Pepe hats, even though they can make a lot of money, they represent an existential risk to the careers of the people who work for that company. But if you are not affiliated with a Globo company, if you are just, have your own business, there's so much money left on the table here. So, yeah, I mean, I'm extremely bullish on what you're doing. And, I think this is very much the beginning of, what's happening as kind of our guys wake up and starting their own businesses to, actually cater to the market. Like I as a reader, I as a whatever, but consumer, I as a consumer want to spend my money on people who don't hate me, people who like me, and I don't have that opportunity. But when I do have that opportunity, when I can get art or entertainment or clothing that is made with me in mind by like people who actually like kind of are on my side in a more kind of deep sense, that's amazing. And like I mean, I think I am probably the one of the ideal like demographic consumers here, like a relatively like normie in my day-to-day life, have my own like interests, extracurricular, and have disposable income to buy t-shirts. So I would think that, and frankly, you know what? I'm going to commit to it right here. I have not done it yet. I feel embarrassed that I have not bought a Good Old Boys tee yet. I'm going to buy the Good Old Boys tee right after this episode, so I can rock it outside. Good Old Boys. Yeah, it's the law in Kennesaw. That might get a little more raised eyebrows around New York City, but yeah, definitely gonna buy at least one of those teas, if not both. And I advise our listeners to as well, because Marek and Bog are good guys, and as are you, obviously, Max.
I'm no longer asking Dan Baltic, you go buy a shirt right now. There will be consequences if you do not.
It's already
I think,
the window's on my screen.
I think what you're speaking to generally, though, is kind of the flattening that's often talked about in our sphere is that, Hollywood can't really produce a good movie anymore. You don't, music's not the same. You turn on FM and it's, 90s and early 2000s stuff still on there. Uh, and I think that it's that principle you're talking about of the risk aversion. If you go to an Ivy League university and you get your master's in marketing, you're going to learn the 3x5 card on how to do business and the formulas associated and numbers associated. Of course, numbers are important. Your margins are important. We all have businesses to run. We all got to make money. But you're going to see a lack of innovation in general and any kind of flattening in a society that we have where there's orthodoxies hanging over us, etc. So I think that's a good point you made with that.
Absolutely. I mean, so you are in some sense not just getting started here, but this is the beginning stages. I'm going to predict that WBS Apparel, as one of the first like big players in this kind of dissident commercial sphere, I think you have a bright future, because there's a market. There really is. And I mean, it's as kind of concrete as last night. Last night, I literally, the end of the week, I wasn't even done working. I was taking a break after dinner, and I wanted to watch something on TV. And so I'm like looking on Netflix, and I'm like, I hate it, I hate it, I hate it. There's nothing I want to see. And so eventually I just like went on YouTube and started watching MDE clips. And that's like, that's what our guys have to do, because there's no longer any like mainstream entertainment that really caters to us. So, I mean, as for clothing, I mean, clothing is a little more of a kind of amorphous thing. Yes, I assume that most like fashion designers would hate me, but you're wearing their clothing. Does it, whatever, does it, really matter? Are you making it your own by wearing it? Who's to say? That being said, it is great to actually be able to rock the images of, our guys and our heroes like Apu and Pepe. We need to get an
You
Apu
know,
hat.
it'll happen, but we certainly have aspirations for high fashion one day. Uh, you know, some of the great Renaissance artists, they were, doing odd jobs for people to start.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And if you want, I think a lot of people with art put the cart before the horse, and that's the stereotype of the starving artist, where entrepreneurship has to be a big focus to start because we got mortgages, we got bills.
Mm,
But if you want to do something greater and kind of have that lateral movement
mm.
that you can have, then there has to be monetization associated with it. So that's what we've seen with you see with a lot of the content creators we're partnering with. There's Patreon, there's subscription services, etc. But I think most of the fans associated with our friends, they'd rather have something physical and tangible, and it makes it real. And you can also identify another fan seeing it, etc. Wearing, identifying with one another with it. So
Absolutely.
but it's a good way to help our guys monetize in general because, like I was talking about a little earlier with the print on demand services, they're really not getting much money out of that.
Yeah,
And we need to, it's really interesting because we operate on the profit share model and they're getting significantly more money per item, even when they're splitting money with us versus those other services.
mm,
So there really is an opportunity to do this right and cater to the market we're talking about.
absolutely. And I think it cannot be stressed enough that the fact that people are wearing your t-shirts, if you're a content creator, I hate that word, but if you're a writer, if you're an artist, if you're, whatever, you that's an advertisement. That's, that's a walking advertisement out there for your stuff, your pod, your novel, your, the media presence that you've created. And yeah, I mean, that is something that you should, really, in my opinion, line up behind because there's no better advertising than like a hot girl wearing your t-shirt, a hot girl joining the Nut Army Elite. So that is definitely something that you should look into.
Yeah, I think when the idea we're getting to with this and our project is, as Uncle Yarb said, if you have a uniform, you have an army. So, not that we're engaging in any paramilitary activities, but if you have a group that can coalesce around a fashion, then
Mm,
that is the ultimate signaling of, and and if you're able to dress well, appear well to people that aren't maybe associated with our quote unquote highly online sphere, then that's how you gain friends and allies because the key is just to be better. It's just
absolutely.
be higher quality.
Absolutely. So there's much that is made about fashion being, inherently lib, inherently progressive or left wing. Obviously, this is not always the case. Hugo Boss references aside, we have, a lot of on the timeline right now nostalgia for the 90s, the 80s, the Abercrombie nostalgia, the Ralph Lauren nostalgia. And I mean, I think that and this is, not exactly the sphere that WBS is currently in, but that being said, I mean, what's your take on what it resembles a right wing or masculine clothing line? What not necessarily, masculine in the sense that like you want stuff that, women wouldn't want to wear, but a clothing line that is based, so to say.
Kino to speak. Yes.
Yeah, there we go.
I
Kino.
think, there's a lot of talk about demoralization, etc. And the doomers are all very down on America. But the American spirit is still alive, no matter as long as we still believe in it. Because even if you go to a man that lives in Turkey or Dubai and you show them an image from Miami Vice,
Hmm.
Point Break, Dukes of Hazzard, they
Hmm.
know what that means, and what that is a spirit. Because there's we have billions and billions of dollars rolling around everywhere here
Hmm.
and ungodly wealth, but you kind of have a spiritual decay. Uh, so
Yeah.
really, what it is about is moralizing. If you, well, obviously the key first in any kind of fashion, we all need to take better care of ourselves. We all need to appear good. You lift weights, do your cardio, et cetera, et cetera. That's the ultimate way to look good in any item that you buy. It's more important, especially a tank top, et cetera. And we love our tanks. But uh yeah, we have to kind of go down that route in terms of having that spirit, because if you look good, you're going to feel good and you're going to be confident in your project. And that is the ultimate reversal to the emasculation of men that you see. And I see it every day walking down the street. It just the look on guys' faces. But, it's obviously not as simple as that, but it's a good start, making them feel good about themselves. And they're going to project that to others. And that's that spiritual renaissance is really the goal overall of the project.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember a recent episode of Good Old Boys. Bog was saying that in Japan, in Japanese wrestling, when they have an American character, he's always like a cowboy Texan bully with like a giant hat, and and I think to an extent, there needs to be a clothing line that kind of re-embraces, yeah, it doesn't have to be like a comical. I mean, it shouldn't be like a comical cowboy outfit, but like what is stereotypically American? What is like to, steal a line from the A24, movie. What type of American are you? And to reclaim a sort of like American fashion, I think, maybe that is more of a long-term goal for WBS, but certainly even in the short term, I remember one of our episodes at New Right, a little over, well over a year ago at this point. We did our White Boy Summer episode about Entourage. It was, I forget what we called it. It was, something to the effect of like Entourage and White Boy Summer. And that type of kind of entourage style, that type of kind of, whether it was the clothing they wore or the kind of demeanor, the swag, that is, when I think of, and correct me if I'm wrong, but when I think of the kind of ethos behind WBS apparel, I think of, yes, Miami Vice, yes, the, kind of vaporwave, nostalgia for the 80s, but also, I mean, we're roughly the same age. We remember a time in our early 20s when America was very different, and, a golden, so that was the name of the episode, the golden age of White Boy Summer. And yeah, I think we lived through that. And, a kind of return to that, a return to the kind of like the turtle aesthetic, the Jimmy, well, yes, but also the, Vincent Chase, whatever, the highbrow, the lowbrow, but within that same kind of, sphere, the type of apparel and clothing that presents a style that's fun and not just not gay. Maybe that's the essence of it, just like finally something that's like not explicitly gay. Not
Yes.
not that if gay
We
guys
are
should wear gay
we are the
stuff,
straightest
but
we are the straightest apparel company of all time. That's for sure.
there we go.
But the the Americana you're talking about is, we all love nostalgia, and we're going to try to develop our own aesthetic, because the only way out is through, as they say, and
Mm,
I'm a big believer in that. So it's all about reforging a new identity as well. And
mm,
of course, it's going to borrow from the things we love of the past and the cowboy And these different archetypes will always be American, and that's
Mm,
great. And those all can be borrowed from, but you can kind of just identify what's great about that. What's great about that aesthetic? What makes people love it so much? And use those questions and answers to
mm,
develop your own brand.
absolutely. Yeah. It's, just simply a matter of just embracing and as you say, an aesthetic, a kind of moment in America where it was, fun and, cool to be one of us.
Yeah.
And, I think where I essentially a lot of the vitality, I think, from our sphere, from the, this kind of dissident, uh, right wing, if, you want to call it that exactly. I think it's, a little more broad based in some respects. It's just people who are dissatisfied with the mainstream. And I mean, obviously, some people are more right wing, but this kind of embrace of a more normal aesthetic of like this is the way men are supposed to dress, this is the way men are supposed to feel. And I think it would be to shortchange WBS apparel and any other business in our sphere to think that this is catering, though I phrased it initially in this way, money on the table, catering to a niche that is not being fulfilled. But the truth is you're presenting, you know, clothing and products and such to cater to a traditional demographic that has been suppressed. It's not
Mhm.
just kind of capitalizing upon a kind of, niche micro celeb environment that no one will go near, but nevertheless has a lot of followers. We have to get into, well, why do they have followers? They have followers because the mainstream has suppressed, traditional gender norms and
Yeah.
other things, suppressed quite a lot, really. So, I mean, I think more than the money being left on the table in terms of no one's touching these like people who have clout and from creating merch and stuff of that nature, no one's touching these strong emotional currents in people regarding what they actually want to wear, what they actually want to watch, what they actually want to spend their money on. And I think that is I'm very bullish on that to the extent that like, you know, companies like WBS are allowed to continue to compete. And I don't think that there's going to be any issue there in the, in the future. Not, I don't want to be a black pillar. And yeah, I think, there's a very bright future because it's not just about putting, uh, you know, Dan Baltic's Doge cap on a t-shirt. It's about putting an aesthetic that has been long suppressed and an ideology that has been long suppressed back into the consumer market.
We very quickly realized that we didn't want to make anything that would put a normal person walking down the street off.
Mm,
I've gotten side eyes from a couple people, uh, probably highly online leftists about the Pepe thing.
mm,
That's all it is. But a normal person would see that or other products and have asked me, "Oh, where'd you get that?" Starts a good conversation. They have no idea about the dissident right. They don't know what's going on Twitter, X, etc. So I think a mistake, a large part of this industry that we're in is involved in the Second Amendment sphere, and we're, gun owners, we're Second Amendment
mm.
guys ourselves. But I think one of the mistakes that some of those businesses do is they're off-putting because, if you do the nods, the AR-15, etc. it's kind of like punching somebody in the face
Mm,
a little bit, walking down the street like, hey, it's kind of a chest beating thing, which is fine,
yeah.
and if you wear that at the range, that's great. If you wear it anywhere, it's fine. But I'm just saying that you're limiting yourself in the context that you can present that. So I think, it's, our products have imagery of firearms on them, etc., but it's in a provocative or funny way. It's a way of like get somebody like smiling or asking questions, not saying like, "Oh, is this guy one of the people MSNBC talks about?" Kind of
Yeah.
thing. So that's kind of the angle we really wanted to go with on that, and people have really liked those products so far, which is great.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely no hate on anyone who has a kind of like, MAGA boomer t-shirt or something of that nature. But that is not what WBS apparel is selling. The stuff is very, it's very online. It's very sophisticated. It's so like one of your, I mean, I'll describe it. You're wearing it right now. I see it. Your hoodie, which is, I believe it's Put It Back, right?
Yeah.
It's a shopping cart, and it's referring to the kind of breakdown in decorum and courtesy, where people no longer put back their shopping carts at the supermarket. And so it shows a shopping cart, a star above it, and I believe underneath it says "Put it back." And
Yeah, you're right.
that, yeah, that is, it's a very kind of subtle, like, yeah, we could have like Donald Trump as the God Emperor with a flaming sword, and that would, that's cool. I don't think I want to wear that, but I don't necessarily disagree with the ideology behind it, but the what you have here is something that is much more subtle and sophisticated, and it's a kind of calling card to the people who are out there and maybe undecided or don't know, like, well, what is going on outside of what I see on MSNBC, outside of what I see on CNN. And I think this is something that makes intuitive sense to normies as well. Put it back. No one wants these
It's
carts,
that it's that simple. It's that simple. And I think what it speaks to is that the most and I live in the city, I'm not on a farmstead or anything like that. And the things I see every day are what causes low trust is kind of the tragedy of the commons situation, where it's just, what's one cart not put back? What does that matter? What is one piece of garbage out the window? But if it doesn't take long for a small percentage of people to ruin the fun for everybody, right? So, and
Yeah,
everybody realized that in any job, institution they participated in, etc. And it's a good message. It is a good message. Just like I'm not, you know, it would just like that's all you have to do to improve our situation. You don't have to, sweep into power and change everything. It's just if everybody did one little thing every day to help, we'd be in such a better situation. But I think people have lost that collective identity of, hey, let's help each other out, just a little bit. That's all it takes.
absolutely. I think that is potentially a great segue to talk about, if you're comfortable, your career before WBS Apparel, where you were a police officer, were you not, Max?
I'd be happy to talk about that with you.
So obviously maintaining order and such things are, critical to, yeah, I would imagine critical to the role of a police officer. What, would, I don't want you to obviously, say anything you can't get into or feel pressured to talk about things that are, difficult to talk about. but in general, what was it like? And so you were an officer before and after the the Floyd miss, the
Yes.
the martyring, and
Summer of Love.
yes, and experienced the full range of our nation's great trials and tribulations during that era. What was that like?
So I graduated police academy in 2013. And when I graduated, my family and friends, they're so proud of me. They were ecstatic, you know. It was still a position of elevation in our
Hmm,
society, even though, the pay isn't the best. I wasn't paid poorly, but you could always make more money doing something else. Um,
hmm,
but it was an elevated status, and it is something special. And I would say, depending, things vary wildly based on your jurisdiction.
hmm,
But policing in the Washington D.C. region obviously it was busy. It was very busy,
hmm.
and you see a lot of things. You carry with you, etc. Um, I would say I saw a little bit of the deterioration go on when the first uh, race riots were happening. It seems like there was a secession. It is kind of weird. It all kind of blends together, right? Which you know controversial shooting or use of force incident caused a riot in that year or that year, kind of
Hmm.
thing. Notably, Freddie Gray was a big one,
Oh
and that
yeah.
hurt. And that hurt the Beltway region for sure. I think one of the more interesting things I noticed is that the stress of the job doesn't come really what you think it's going to come from. It doesn't usually come from the criminal. Usually when
Hmm.
you get them in handcuffs, they're kind of frustrated, but they still recognize, oh, I got caught, this time I'm going to
Hmm.
jail, whatever. Um, and the stress comes internally from local government, the prosecutors and defense attorneys who deal with judges. And I definitely think over all the different incidents that happened over the years, there was definitely a chilling effect of it was a growing hostility of the government employees that were non-police against the police.
Hmm.
And, definitely, there was resentment from the public growing for sure for a while.
Hmm.
Um, and I'll be the first to say, not all of the grievances against policing are unfounded, of course. But yeah, I think there was
Hmm.
it went from being a really positive, fun, like good job, and there was, I think when I applied, I don't remember the stats exactly. There was, hundreds and hundreds of applications per position. It was like, oh, it's very prestigious that you got in, and
Hmm.
the department I left, they can't even
Hmm.
find anybody to come in police academy anymore. So that's a big problem you're seeing, and you're kind of seeing an aging out of people, and they're just trying to protect their pensions. There's a lot of people that are going to be leaving the next 5 years, and there isn't going to be that many people to replace them, which is unfortunate. It's really
Sure.
unfortunate to see what's happened to the profession. You know, but I think that one of the more interesting things I've seen from trolling progressive forums since the Floyd incidents is they've kind of come like liberals have come to the uncomfortable question of how do we get the police to actually do their job? Because I think they've recognized that trust has been broken,
Hmm.
and the police are kind of looking out for themselves now.
Hmm.
And unfortunately, it's very difficult to get that trust back. It's kind of built on decades and decades of layers of understanding that the police will be prosecuted in only the most erroneous uh,
Yeah.
where incidents that are obviously criminal, you know. And I don't think officers have that trust anymore.
Yeah,
So,
of course.
and you kind of see there's a lot of stuff that goes on due to these things. You see officers kind of like trying to make it off the road, one way or another, because there's a lot of different positions that you don't necessarily have to be out there running and gunning. So you're kind of seeing a lot of officers avoiding patrol. But
Yeah.
patrol is the backbone of any police department. So yeah, that's a big problem.
How would you say it changed after Floyd? I mean, was that just kind of like Freddie Gray on steroids?
Mm, yeah, I would say that was kind of the nail in the coffin in terms of everything, every incident that happened. And I think a lot of people just said, just threw up their hands and said, okay, like we won't do our
Yeah.
job anymore. We're because to help people understand what it's like doing the job on a daily basis, you're as a patrol officer, you're responding to calls in general. So if someone even has their grandmother dies, the police are still going to make sure nothing's amiss,
Hmm.
etc. So there's a lot of calls that are prioritized, etc. So that's a lot of hours out of your day.
Yeah.
But you're supposed to kind of the unspoken thing is you're supposed to be doing other stuff, between those calls. You're supposed to be checking in on businesses. You're supposed to be out there stopping people who are probably engaged in criminal activity, etc. But there's no legal requirement for the police to really do that between their calls because
Yeah.
then it kind of goes into the avenue of quotas, et cetera, which are illegal. But there's no legal obligation for you to kind of you are kind of putting your neck out there a little bit, generating more work for
Yeah.
yourself and everything. So I think and this speaks to the problems of bureaucracy, right? Because everybody that's been involved, been to the DMV, she has to do the bare minimum, the lady that's getting you a new license or whatever, and she doesn't care how long you
Yeah.
wait. So there's the private sector versus public sector problem, and that's obviously a very big problem in policing in that regard.
Yeah. I mean that seems clear to me. I mean like so I live in New York and I mean I have noticed that post Floyd the city is less safe. There's, more I mean in the news you hear it more, random violent incidents, but also you just see it. Like I remember I was about to get on the subway one day, and there was this young gentleman walking by saying something to the effect of, "Damn, I want to kill somebody today." And it's the type of thing where, I'm a lifelong New Yorker. I didn't usually used to hear stuff like that. It's certainly the type of thing where, it puts you on your guard. You think, well, if this guy wants to kill someone today, is he going to pick me? Is he? I certainly want him to pick another guy. So I'm like, very much like, and also you kind of like, because of we see the Daniel Penny type incidents, you don't want to put your neck out on the line. You just want to make sure that like I'm well free of whatever the incident ground zero range is. So that's just not a great position for a city to be in. And I think like adequate policing would of course change this completely. New York was completely different before 2015, significantly different before Floyd. Very different after Floyd, after COVID. I mean, COVID and Floyd obviously were kind of like a 1-2 punch to the city's safety. But yeah, it's and I don't fault the police for not wanting to, take on this extra legal and reputational and safety burden, frankly, to a certain extent. I mean, of course, cops are paid to put their lives on the line, that is the point of the job, at least, for, some, positions. But yeah, when, as you say, when the trust is broken, that's a different situation. So yeah, I feel like this problem of policing is really endemic because you have I mean, for instance, my parents will, even say, well, I think this guy will be tougher on crime. And I tell them, if he's not a Republican, he literally cannot be tougher on crime because they have these obligations to their, internal pressure groups, which they cannot abrogate. And you cannot have a Democrat in a major city who is tough on crime. It cannot happen at this rate. You would need to have a sort of, civil war in the party. You would need to have a Gavin Newsom type Caesar. I mean, like, not to say that's what Gavin Newsom would be, but you need a blue Caesar who kind of changes the equation and says, I'm in charge and we're going to start doing law and order. And yes, obviously it wouldn't be a red Caesar. He wouldn't put the world to rights, but I can see the possibility of a blue Caesar who seizes control and reinstates law and order. But barring that, the average politician on the Democratic side cannot do this in a major city. And, good luck finding a Republican who wins in a major city as mayor.
I think what you're speaking to is there is a deep problem within progressive thinking and ideology that, and I saw it even before 2020, is that kind of every person, that comes up that's been charged, indicted, is kind of, considered based on, their demographic, et
Mm.
cetera. And it is treated differently by the prosecutor. And, the prosecutors
The
obviously have
Soros DAs.
yeah, they have political pressure, but also in how they're thinking about it is, uh, and I think we've just come to this uncomfortable place where it kind of, the current zeitgeist post uh, civil rights era America is kind of in a failed social experiment,
Yeah.
unfortunately. And
Controlled
I wasn't
anarcho-tyranny.
anarcho tyranny rampant, of course. But I think there is kind of that. There was that understanding. I was even kind, I would say fairly normie con coming into the job, and
Mm.
definitely, I did want to treat, and I always treated people fairly, no matter what their
Yeah,
background
of
was
course.
or whatever. But there is kind of that broken promise I that was given to me that like everybody was going to be treated equal, and that's just not the case. It's not. So, and maybe that was foolish of me to believe in that in the first place. But yeah, now it's like become reality, not just conjecture.
Yeah.
So
No, I mean, absolutely. It's a strange situation we find ourselves in here, I must say. So I think this brings us to the future of policing. How do you see this going? Regardless of, I don't think, as I mentioned, it is likely we'll see a law and order Republican mayor in any major city in the near future, barring maybe Jacksonville. But yeah, so what does policing look like in America in 2024? Whether it's under a President Trump, a President Anthony Blinken, a President whoever stands in for Joe, we'll see.
I'm skeptical of the regime using the same tactics of for the 2020 election with an incumbent Democrat. generally it does not favor an incumbent for any sort of disorder
Hmm,
occurring under their administration. So I would be very surprised if they use similar tactics to this upcoming election. But looking
interesting.
further looking further out, even outside of whether Trump wins again or not, etc. I think just uh, public policy is at a point where it's going to, even within our lifetimes, lead to different crises, and it's really unfortunate because we've grown up in a very peaceful and prosperous time, despite whatever
Hmm,
complaints we may have about the social order,
hmm.
etc., and problems. But I think the white pill in that is that if we're going to triumph, succeed, survive, whatever, despite whatever crises may occur, then
Yeah,
we definitely have to become something more than what we are now. So I think that's kind of the principle of riding the tiger that's often referenced uh, in our spheres. And yeah, we do have to be better, essentially, no matter what happens. I don't think there's anyone or any movement in the immediate future that's going to come and save us at all. So
yeah,
we have to do best by ourselves and our friends.
yeah. I mean, if I were a professional prognosticator, and I am not, I am just a humble nut salesman. But if I were, I would say that there will be a precipitous rise in private security because, libs in, elite areas do not want to suffer the extreme effects of anarcho tyranny. And I could see the rise of a more significant than currently exists private security class and force, and also just for sections of the country where which are more conservative, which are not liberal. I mean, I think the effects of this Soros DA stuff is just, you correct me if I'm wrong, but I would imagine it's less widely felt. So let's say you live in upstate New York, you know, I think you still have New York laws. You still have like New York you know DAs, but is the DA in like Jefferson County, New York, a big lib? I would doubt it. I mean, maybe. Is the DA in like rural Michigan a big lib? Maybe. But I mean, I think like what we'll have, in the future is in the lib areas a hostile justice system, which is also nevertheless a wink wink justice system where they, make sure not to harm their own clients who fund them, and a justice system in red America that kind of more or less functions as justice traditionally has functioned in America. And that's how I see the future shaking out without getting too apocalyptic, without, I could obviously make further predictions, et cetera, but just like I think that's, in some sense probably how it's even currently functioning, because I mean I cannot imagine I live in New York. I certainly there's no private security in New York unless you live in a very a community where people wear special hats.
You know,
Otherwise,
you know, there's a long way down, is what we're getting at here. And it was interesting. I met a South African recently, and I asked him about how, their legal system functions in his section of South Africa, etc., and how the government has kind of closed the gap It's
Hmm.
with order there is obviously there's a lot of dysfunction and violence going on. So
Of course,
the
yes.
the government has become unable to uh, properly prosecute and arrest a lot of the criminals. So there has been a privatization of the police there, in which these privately commissioned police deliver the perp and the case file to the government, and they say, "Here you go, like we did your job for you," and
Hmm.
then that's how the case is handled. And uh, I don't think that that's ideal, of course, but that's kind of the natural flow of things when the government recognizes its inability to prevent uh, a certain, cause a certain level of disorder. So there
Yeah,
you'll see a lot of the enclavism, like we're talking about in terms of like reshuffling of people. But I can, tell you from even my personal experience living in Baltimore that it's a weird function that you may live in a neighborhood that is really safe in even Baltimore, Maryland, despite its
mm,
bad reputation, very low levels of violence, etc.
mm,
But if something happens, in the neighborhood, you're going to see police cruisers floating around for the next week because they're, whatever complaints you have of progressive governments in cities, etc., they understand the concept of not making their tax base flee the city. So
mm,
there's still that element of it that will protect certain pockets in certain cities, that there'll be that going on. And
mm.
so there's not, I don't really endorse the kind of thinking on you see on social media and everybody get out of the cities. Yeah, so a lot of us make our money here. We're gonna live here. It does. We are just fine here. We might like even some things about it, etc. So I don't think we should just cede territory just because the political situation becomes unfriendly, and there's no need to publicly tell anyone what your
Yeah,
real political affiliation is. And I have friends of all sorts of different backgrounds, and they have they don't know anything about my dissident
sure.
right beliefs, and there's no need for me to tell them that. And they
Absolutely.
and when you talk to these people, they're not stupid. They know things aren't going well. So kind of the way to have people kind of turn to our thinking a little bit is just say, hey, how about this? How about that? And they'll acknowledge it. They know. So in the future, uh, if we're going to succeed, we have to show a different way, like we've been talking about. So that's what it's all about. You don't just uh, you know, treat people poorly just because the milieu they grew up led them to those beliefs, etc. Most people do not have the ability to think critically and form their own ideology. So, there's no need to make war with people like that in your personal life. That's all I'm saying.
Absolutely. The recently we had both attended the NATO conference, which was to some extent organized and sponsored by Exit Group, which is by Kevin Dolan, by Bennett's Phylactery. He has a group whereby various men who want to form careers and businesses outside of the mainstream have created those careers, and by virtue of the synergy within the group, etc. And these kind of businesses and such, I think, correct me if your experience was different, but getting together at a hotel in Austin and meeting a lot of people who have the same ideas or similar ideas, or at least want to work together, start businesses, start talking about how to kind of promulgate the values that would actually restore the America of our youths to its rightful place. That was a real white pill, and kudos to Dr. B, Bennett's Phylactery, for making that happen. And yeah, what was your takeaway from the Natal conference, which we both had a very good time at.
Well, I knew we were going to become friends when we were bonding over our similar taste in women.
There we go.
Septum piercing and attitude, and all the selective breeding sessions that happened at Natalism, etc. They're all great. I loved it, and I think Exit Group is the start of something larger, like we talked about before, in terms of us just everybody going their own way and being smart about it and building a network. And just like the cathedral is a network, we can build our own network in these ways. So it was a great experience, and I think that although we didn't solve, the fertility rates, while we're there, you can only do so much. Uh, one man, two men can only do so much, but uh, I think recognizing the problem is the solution to anything to start, and I think we all have a good grip on what direction we should be heading, and working together in collaboration, because uh, that's the best part of our business project so far, is that there's no sense of hostility, because we're helping people out and they're helping us out, and that's what flourishing in business and our personal lives should be about. So yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, to me, it was just, it's a great opportunity to, you see people who, maybe you only know from online, what have you. This is not like a bar meetup. This is not like it's an actual conference. It's at a hotel. And that is, that it's a real kind of moment of legitimacy. It's a moment of, bringing people together who, have ideas and resources. And, it was great to, I mean, that was the first time we met each other in person. Hopefully we'll see each other again soon. But yeah, it's great to actually connect with people in person. And it was a very good opportunity for that. And in addition, the Exit Group, it's putting together guys who are trying to create careers outside of the system. And like, I personally can, so I'm not a member. I'm not getting, Dr. B is not, giving me a kickback or anything for this. I just think it's a cool thing. Um, it's a way to like put men with resources together to figure out how can we work together. And so, like, myself as a lawyer, I number one, I need to get paid. But number two, in addition to needing to get paid, I have clients who I do work for who I get paid very little. Or it's a skill trade. I do something for them, they do something for me. And it's, when I have the opportunity to work with people I believe in, that is, in itself a reward of sorts. So I think, Dr. B is doing the Lord's work here. He is, putting together people who are, on side, so to say, who, want to make it happen. And that's great. And also as a, someone who was only recently became his own boss. I mean, previously I had worked for other firms. Now I make my own money. It's an incredible feeling. And I want all of our guys to be doing this. Making your own money is just suddenly like you become, 3 inches taller. And I'm not talking about height. So it feels really good.
Yeah, I think there's ever since the WBS team has started, we're all like springboarding out of bed and then dreaming of success. And there's honestly no better feeling than that in the world, really, because I think, most people that you meet on a personal basis feel disaffected in their careers and in their lives, even. Um, so I think that we have to, like, no one's going to do anything for us. We have to make our own projects and etc. So yeah,
Absolutely.
and yeah, there's no better feeling than it. It's great.
Well, on that note, I think we probably covered more or less everything we set out to cover, but obviously this is a forum for you. So if you have any, I'll deliver plugs, but if you can deliver them better yourself, you certainly should. And yeah, do you have anything else you want to talk about, Max?
No, I think that about covered it. Thanks, Dan. It was really fun. Let's do it
Absolutely.
again soon sometime for sure.
Yeah. So you guys, our followers here, our new right listeners, our nut buddies, you want to go to WBS Apparel. You have to spell apparel correctly. It's tough to spell, but you'll look it up, you'll figure it out. WBSapparel.com. And they have a lot of different options. They have content partnerships with Axios Training, Good Old Boys, Bog Beef and Marek. Great merch there. With me, Dan Baltic, the king of literature. What more could you ask for? So I mean, they recently, you guys got the sunglasses, the A24 Civil War. What type of American are you sunglasses? Those are almost sold out, are they not?
Now you better go get one while you can.
Exactly. It's this stuff is selling out. So you want to wear it. You want to wear it to your next Dime Square party. You want to wear it to your next LA thing, like well, whatever Matt's doing in LA today. Anyone who shows up wearing a Pepe hat, that person is going to pretty much assuredly get laid. So you should wear a Pepe hat if you enjoy having sex. Beyond that, I don't even really know what to tell you. So you should buy some WBS apparel merch because it looks really good and you're supporting our guys. And it has been great to have you on. Follow WBS on Twitter. It's WBS Apparel, the handle. And yeah. It's thank you for coming on, Max.
We are the Hugo Boss of the next regime.
Absolutely.